Good morning, everybody. I want to call to order the April meeting of the Safety Committee, the MTA Board. Can we hear the safety announcement, please?
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Okay, thank you. Chris, are any public speakers?
We do, Chair. Chair Lieber, there are 5 public speakers. 3 are present, 2 will be remote. The first speaker will be Mary Bowden, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I just sent you a present, Jano. It's the cap that the police wore when I came here. And my question to you is, why don't you issue that color cap to the rest of the MTA crew so that we know who works for you? You use a dark blue cap. Hey, I'm in a wheelchair because I can't stand so long and I can't walk so far. But I also can't see that well. If I can, the traffic people have it, why don't your crew have it? Safety is consistency. I got it written down. You've gone high tech, but you stopped at the beginning. You're using road lines that are 50 years old. They were designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Drivers can't drive where the lines are, and you've created a situation where if you can ignore it, why can't we ignore it? The signs that you see on the overhead, the big ones, you can see a mile away because the 3M company bribes somebody to use highly reflective stuff. You can see the signs, you just can't read them. It's all about money. Who's making money? Going right across all of your organizations, everybody's doing high tech, but they forgot where you all came from. This is not 1950. Robert Moses is long dead. If you want drivers to obey, you got buses that reading the lines left and right. You have to consistently have lines on the left so the computer on a bus knows where to go. The cars are driving themselves, and you can change the direction of the lights in the back, but you can't get the roads right.
Please conclude your remarks.
On the road right. Yes, you're right. I speak too long. I can't remember too much. And I want to thank all of the people that have been so nice to me at the MTA. I could not have done it without their help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Jason Anthony.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to... Good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. We again point out the importance of the safety committee meetings and ask that they be held monthly and later in the day at a time when more people are likely to pay attention. It's so disheartening to see the increase in assaults against employees and MTA PD. This month's book shows that in February, Metro North was where the preponderance of these unacceptable acts were occurring. Why? No one should put their life in jeopardy simply by going to work on the railroad. And while the numbers seem to be declining against both Long Island Railroad, subway, and bus employees, they're still way too high. In the breakdown of summonses and arrests across the system, it would be good to know if people are being caught and held accountable for these crimes, and then what the outcomes of those cases are. In the electronic security program update that will come during this meeting, we look forward to hearing how the technology being used will help protect riders and the system, but also the employees and the PD who keep the MTA rolling. We'd also hope for an update on the e-bike, e-scooter policy. You can't turn on the news without hearing about fires from lithium-ion batteries. Also, the councils will be speaking about it this week. We hear continuously from riders about people charging these devices on board trains and in stations, and also riding them in stations. A solid and declarative policy with teeth will let people know the rules and give those enforcing them the backup they need to do their jobs. In fact, I saw a sign in my library about no riding and no charging scooters or e-bikes. We stand ready to assist. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good morning, General. Good morning, Pat. Jason Anthony here. Just returning from my spring break vacation in Orlando, Florida. This morning, I'm going to speak regarding several incidents that have been occurring in our beloved subway system. One of them being in my home station, Atlantic Avenue, Barclays Center. It is very alarming that Transit District 32 is not there at during the night. It is very concerning that yours truly uses that station every day for the past 7 years. And I could see police officers from that transit district and from police precincts from that area distracted on their cell phones, receiving reports. And yes, we could understand that they could receive reports on their cell phones, but they have to be attentive to their surroundings, because something could happen in a snap of a finger. And I could be listening to music on one AirPod, but I could be attentive to my surroundings. And that's we need to be telling to our police officers while they are patrolling our subway system, because we need to stop these incidents all at once right now. I'll see you guys in the next
Please conclude your
meeting.
remarks. Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by Alita Dupre.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif. I'm sorry I'm not there, but I'm here on the screen. I'd like to bring up some safety concerns for people with disability as well as seniors. As we get on these elevators at certain stations, they're not in that much in Brooklyn issues, but they're in the other boroughs. I am glad to see there are officers, but at the same time also, safety is very important for seniors and people with disabilities across the board. And we need to make sure that officers are also near the turnstile areas, like in a lot of the major transit point stations and non-transit point stations. I'd like to thank Transit 34, the precincts and the parts of Brooklyn are been attending and seeing these people, try not to sneak through the gate, but we definitely need to continue working on that. And I do want to thank the MTA police that did catch some kids trying to almost jump off to a track, and lucky they did respond very quickly. It was a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't here in the city. I was away, but I still want to say thank you to the MTA police. But again, we do need to work on strongly to safety for seniors and people with disabilities, all the boroughs, including Staten Island, because as you know, people want to get on the trains and buses. They want to commute. They want to head to their destination. If it's working, if it's going to classes, or even better, going somewhere to have some fun, spend time with their family and friends. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alita Dupree.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Jano, Lieber, and members. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. It's good to be back with you. I need my clock here. I'm going to talk about safety. And I talk about the basics, as I mentioned in the topics. Revenue and property. I think we're doing some good things with the station agents, and that we are having our money put into the vending machines. But how can we go to the next level with our railroads? Because people are at risk when we have money being collected on the trains, and I think they still do. So that's something we have to keep working on because we want to reduce targets. And safety awareness is essential. How can we have signage to help people to be more informed about being aware on the system? You know, when I get on any transit system, I'm scanning, looking all around me, and I generally pace around a lot. I rarely stay in one place because I want to be safe on the system. And I think overall, this is a very safe system. It's not a perfect system. And I'm not laying blame on anybody, but I think awareness is key for all of us to have the safest system that we can. And we have lots of stairs. How can we keep after issues such as spills and other objects on platforms and stairways that people can trip over? That's a part of safety too. So I have to keep my wits about me when I'm climbing and riding on escalators. Escalator safety is very important. I look forward to using the long escalators in Grand Central
Recording
Madison.
in progress.
I think my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Lieber, that concludes today's public speaking session.
Okay. Thank you to all the public speakers for participating. We do appreciate it. Pat, are there any, approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes?
It's a strictly grammatical one, but on page 5, Mr. Warren commented on some of the efforts. The word "of" is missing. Some of the efforts. Thank you.
Okay. Any other changes or additions? Okay. Okay. I'm told that we're lacking a quorum. In that event, we'll make the changes, but we'll bring it back for formal approval at the next meeting of the committee. Pat, are there any changes to the work plan?
Chair, there are no changes.
Okay. We're going to do a presentation on the PEV policy, the use of e-bikes and e-scooters. This is an area that we've been trying to figure out for some time because I think, as folks know, they are present on the system. They do have significant advantages for some of our customers, especially folks who are dealing with that first mile, last mile connection. They may be coming from our outlying areas and wanting to get to a commuter railroad station, or in many cases, folks find it useful to move around the city when they get into the city on those areas, on those vehicles. It's also environmentally responsible, and they're here to stay. I think that we are seeing, just by the prevalence of these types of vehicles, that we have to deal with them. We want to allow them on the subway and on our other facilities, but it has to be done safely, and that's why we're talking about it today. So we've got a new policy that's been worked on for some time, and I'll hand it over to Pat for a presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. We're fortunate to have an extremely talented safety professional on staff, Jonathan Fazio. Mr. Fazio has over 20 years of tactical and strategic experience in both the heavy construction field and railroading. Prior to joining the headquarters safety team, he served 8 years with Long Island Railroad, working on projects ranging from PTC to mainline expansion, better known as third track. Jonathan has spent a large part of the last year researching the many safety aspects concerning PEVs and authored our new policy for these devices. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chairman, you folks probably haven't seen me up here, but chances are you've heard me say,
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA.
so that would be me. If you take anything away from today, just remember that. So with that, we're going to dive right into this. Okay, back one. All right. So I got some notes I'm going to read through, but I'll go through the slides basically and just elaborate on everything. We'll have a question and answer session at the end. The MTA Safety Management Office began its research by collecting a body of information regarding PEVs and transportation systems from safety and security organizations, including the Department of Homeland Security, National Fire Protection Association, and various fire departments. We focused principally on the risks and hazards associated with lithium-ion batteries. Our work with the FDNY identified challenges of how and why lithium-ion batteries fail due to overcharging, overheating, repacking, damaged batteries. These lessons aided in some of the restrictions that our policy addresses. We also used the NFPA's lessons learned for e-bike and e-scooter safety. Our research found that fires commonly attributed to lithium-ion batteries and PEVs occurred as part of the charging process. We found no incident where an undamaged, unaltered, overcharged, and UL-certified battery in PEVs overheated or caught fire during common use. So as you can see here in the slides, basically it just shows how we benchmarked, we collaborated with various outfits, reviewed existing MTA requirements, and then reviewed various hazard analyses. So with benchmarking, the MTA Safety Office further reached out to leading transit agencies, both national and international, to collect a body of information regarding their work, research, policies, procedures involving PEVs. We found that leading transit agencies have similar guardrails in place or have not yet developed a policy. Those agencies with PEV rules specified conditions for bringing PEVs into their systems, to which we included and then further elaborated on. Basically, we went through agency safety departments, operation departments, legal, the whole gamut. We went up and down all the agency departments to get input, collaboration, lessons learned, and basically we consolidated this research information and developed a draft policy which was then vetted multiple times within the many departments at MTA headquarters and our agencies. Additionally, we turned discussions with some of our board members, advocacy groups, to aid in the policy development. Policy development considered operational and safety topics, including current bicycle policies, scooter and other personal conveyance policies, the environment in which PEVs would operate, existing operational conditions, the ability to enforce and how to enforce, establish legal requirements regarding transit and railroad rules of conduct. After dozens of reviews, it says dozens, but it was way more than dozens, many reviews, revisions, enhancements, we believe we have developed a forward-thinking and well-researched PEV policy. So this slide's going to highlight really some of the high-level stuff, the high-level restrictions with the policy. Number one being no charging. The MTA already has policies which limit size and weight of personal vehicles, and those are reiterated in this policy. Similarly, current PEV policies address the safety hazards created when PEVs and other objects block passive egress and emergency equipment. As such, there are limitations on size, weight, quantity, as well as time of day, peak versus off-peak, and which days these can be brought onto our systems. And because each agency has different constraints in their stations and vehicles, this PEV policy points to some of the agency's policies for bicycles and other personal equipment. Shared micromobility equipment is prohibited, And lastly, we reiterate the current policy for PEVs prohibits operation of any PEVs on property. So these are considered as a bicycle, but the lithium-ion batteries obviously are the largest hazard in this, the overcharging and the fires. Don't charge it anywhere at all. You can't operate it in the system. So I know folks, like, we can leave this boardroom, chances are we'll see a PEV in the system, and you might have seen them, you know, flying down the platforms and whatnot. We never had guardrails in place, so this is really going to set the industry standard for guardrails for PEVs. The size and weight restrictions are similar to that of the bicycle policies, so we're not overlapping that. And then do not block aisles, walkways, equipment, vestibules, operator cabs, so on and so forth. Okay, as batteries are the primary difference between a PEV and other personal vehicles, this policy provides requirements associated with batteries, including that only UL certified batteries that are structurally sound, again, not repacked, not damaged, not leaking, are permitted. The policy also directs that when equipped, PEVs must also be folded and that they must never be discarded, locked, or attached to an MTA asset. Garbage can, column, so on and so forth, piece of equipment. The customer communications campaign, so these folks are really great. To inform our customers of the new policy, we developed a communications campaign using the various communications mediums, including web pages, apps, digital screens found in cars, buses, trains, stations. Each agency will have a similar campaign catered to their unique operating environment while directing folks to the same MTA-wide policy. So if you look on the presentation, you're going to see Metro North, buses, subways, and Long Island Railroad. They're all going to point to the same policy, but they're kind of tweaked to each individual operating department and agency. Yes, sir.
The print was very fine on that slide, but does it state what the penalties are for violating these policies?
So at that level, it's really a high level. It doesn't go into rules of conduct or state. You know, we would work with MTA, PD.
Like if somebody is caught zooming down a subway platform on a PEV, can it be taken from them? Can it be seized? I mean, what's...
We didn't put those type of restrictions in the policy or in the advertising campaign, but that's something that we can consider to kind of have as an addendum or attachment or something along those lines. Sure. So folks know what happens if you, understood.
Board Member Albert, we currently have similar issues with bikes on the platform now, so it's the same policies that we have now, which are, we can tell you that we've looked at summonses, we've looked at all the recent, like for the last year worth of stuff, very small, usually riding the bike, usually a summons issued. That's typically what's happened.
And then finally, to wrap up the customer communications campaign, there's going to be some high-level restrictions listed, as you just saw, with a QR code that points directly to the actual policy guidelines and breaks everything out. So as importantly, messaging bulletins are being prepared and delivered to our workforces describing the conditions of the PEV policy and what their responsibilities are regarding it. And just to kind of recap and reel this whole thing in, we evaluated the risks, hazards, we engaged with all the stakeholders in this agency and outside of it, methodically developed a policy that addressed concerns, and we're launching a comprehensive customer education campaign. And we're confident that what we are doing this safely and effectively as possible as we look to continue setting the bar for safe and reliable transportation. I'll now take any questions. Fire away.
Does this policy apply to mopeds as well as PEVs?
It would apply to any, right, so mopeds, if it's a gas-powered
Which are heavier
vehicle.
and may have a license plate, actually, but...
Exactly. So we have a size and weight restriction. So a moped historically would probably be outside of the guardrails of what this policy would allow. Thus
No
restricting it.
gas-powered vehicles. No gas.
No gas-powered, hydrogen, it's
It's only electric.
battery-powered.
Okay, thanks.
Sir.
Mr. Brinkman.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback on what Board Member Albert said earlier. We should have something in there about possible penalties or fines.
Okay.
That's what gets people's attention, if you hit them in the pocketbook. You know, if one of these guys knows they get hit with a $100 fine for riding down the platform, they're less likely to do it. And if they see one of the MTA police writing a summons for something like that and say, hey, you know, we can get hit, it's going to grab their attention. The other thing on the publicity campaign for this, You mentioned don't block aisles, walkways, whatever. But I think you really need to emphasize, don't block the handicapped access space, because that's an open area, and that's where most of the people are parking them now. Because it's set up for a wheelchair, so it can easily fit one of their things, and that's what we're seeing. So if you could just add that to to the don't block, it'd be greatly appreciated. The last thing, and I don't want to push the issue right now, it seems like you have it under control, but you mentioned maybe an addendum down the line, is let's review this once we set this thing in place and maybe come back in 6 months to see if we need to go with permitting these vehicles. Not the regular bicycles, just these vehicles. If you can enforce without doing a permit system, that's great, but just something to keep in mind down the line. And that's it. But other than that, I think it's great. I think it's long overdue. And speaking for the riders, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Let me just
much.
say, I appreciate your comment about that we have to communicate clearly about what areas are the right locations for people to park these things. So that's a really good point that we should pay special attention to. We don't want folks using the handicap parking area for that. Mr. Tessitore.
So, I'll piggyback the same thing about the permits for the future, and I know that we are going to look at it and consider it for down the road. Can we also assume, when we're talking about aisleways, walkways, obviously, we can't occupy a seat, because that seems to be a big problem. Even folded, if somebody is riding in a seat, they could stand it up next to them and occupy a seat, and then people don't have the ability to sit next to somebody. So I would, hopefully overhead racks, but if they don't fit in the overhead racks, occupying a seat is going to be a continued problem. I don't know if we want to add that verbiage as well.
Duly noted. We'll consider. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes. Presentation will be circulated. A couple of good pointers for us to add into the communications campaign. There's no reason it can't be adjusted to highlight a couple of these issues. So thank you, Mr. Fazio. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So let me, we're at time here, but in addition to the PEV policy, which we put in this brief today because it was important, it's timely, and we needed to do it, right? But there are the two other topics that were in the work plan. They included safety program update, which is in the book, as well as electronic access control system update, which is also in the book. There's a lot of material in there, and I asked you to take a look at it, and if there's issues to circle back or you want to have a one-on-one meeting on it, I'm glad to do that. And I thank Shelley for putting the material together today for Metro North Railroad, so thank you for that. And I think that's it.
Well, I mean, you're rushing a bit, but just to emphasize, we should, when we have, in transit, we'll have the chief here to talk about it, but we continue to maintain, improve crime statistics vis-a-vis 2022, and I will say it again and again, we're getting tremendous cooperation from the Transit Bureau of the NYPD. Chief Kemper has been a great partner. Is there anything else you need to talk about with respect to employee safety and accidents?
Just will say that employee safety and accidents, and as well as customer, they either they're improving, trending down slightly, or they're largely flat. So that's good. But the team, as Shelley was going to highlight, was about what they're doing to try to get after those trends and improve them. And the electronic security update would pile on to what the chairman just talked about in terms of how we improve security in the system and the many systems, very robust programs out there for whether it's cameras, AI, lids, TIDs, and other devices that are going into the system, and the statuses of all those programs is in the update.
So, Mr. Albert, I would like to hear from Ms. Prettyman for just a moment. Are we going to make a presentation?
She has a presentation.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I know we're short of time, but I don't want to.
I can certainly keep it brief in the interest of time.
Please.
But Mr. Fazio, I believe you have the clicker. If you don't mind, if you can just.
The clicker be moved.
That's fine. While he brings that around, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Metro North Railroad System Safety Program. Thank you, and forward and back. I should be able to do that. Okay. Okay, there we go. So there are 5 divisions in the Metro North Office of System Safety. I'm going to go over 4 of them very quickly. A little more detail on field safety operations and investigations, because as Pat said, I want to give you a sense of the key efforts we have in place to prevent incidents and drive down those customer and employee injury rates. So the other 4 divisions: emergency management and fire safety. That includes emergency management planning and preparedness, EMS and fire response. I want to mention this quickly. It's not just the GCT Fire Brigade, which I think you're all familiar, is covering GCM now, Grand Central Madison, as well as Grand Central Terminal, and the system-wide fire marshals in chief. Fire prevention programs, code compliance. We have the risk reduction group with hazard analysis, industrial hygiene, environmental compliance, and safety engineering. Safety analytics and initiatives. It handles all of our data collection and analysis, including reporting internally and externally, including to the FRA. And our TRACS public safety education and outreach program. And finally, federal and company drug and alcohol testing. That's pre-employment, post-accident and incident, and random testing and contractor oversight for the Part 219 plans. So what I really wanted to say a little bit more about today is field safety operations and investigations, and this is still just highlights of the programs that this area covers. And I'm going to dig in most into the incident investigation process. So that's the process for investigating every customer incident and injury, every employee incident and injury, and property damage report. They also conduct operational incident investigations, and there are a few other programs there I'll say a couple words on. So for incident investigations, as I mentioned, each incident and injury is documented and investigated. We have field safety managers who are assigned by district and in partnership with the investigators. They work with operations to investigate as according to the incident and whatever it may require. The investigation may include interviews, site inspections, equipment inspections, procedural reviews, tool and equipment reviews. Obviously, any immediate actions that are needed, those remediations are done as appropriate. And while the report is being completed, system safety staff review the status daily to close out. The investigations result in identification of root causes, contributing factors, corrective actions. They're identified and documented for follow-up. And one thing that we've recently reinstituted, which we found is really helpful, is rotating biweekly meetings with the operating departments to review key cases in depth. So the analytics group will look at recent incidents and injuries and look for patterns or trends or light cases, and we'll sit down with one of the operating departments and really dig into those to make sure that our investigation process identified everything that we can be doing to prevent future incidents of those kinds and, again, drive down those rates. So the findings and trends are also shared with operations training so they can incorporate that into ongoing operations training. So for significant operational incidents, this is, for example, if we have a mainline or yard derailment or a blue signal violation, a critical operating rule violation, if we have an incident of any of that sort, we lead the investigation of those incidents through a committee process. So system safety investigators report on scene to initiate the investigation with the operations leads. So they document everything on site, conduct interviews, audio and video reviews, again, documentation and procedure reviews in partnership with operations. And obviously, operations will also perform equipment and infrastructure inspections as appropriate. An interdepartmental committee is convened to review all of the evidence and determine, again, the root causes, contributing factors, and establish corrective actions. And we track those corrective actions through closeout. So again, it's important that we don't just conclude the investigation, but we look at the findings and trends, and we share those and review those, communicate them in multiple forums, including our district performance reviews, our quarterly safety focus events, our labor management committee meetings. And again, we share those always with operations training, so we have a feedback loop to make sure that the most recent safety trends and findings are included in our training programs. Other key programs and initiatives, we have the Roadway Worker Protection Audit Group. So through this effort, groups of managers from operating departments, operating rules, operations training, and of course system safety will dedicate an entire shift to going out and about the right-of-way to conduct audits for compliance with the roadway worker protection rules and our safety rules. And a really important part of that is that interactive discussions are held with the employees on site about the rules and procedures to ensure understanding. We also, in our field safety group, conducts regular proactive audits and inspections of stations, yards, shops, and locations along the right-of-way. And they conduct periodic cleanups in partnership with operations, of course, of yards and right-of-way locations. And the district safety committees are actually one of the key forums where we not just review safety concerns in the district, but we also review and those inspection findings and plan the cleanups. And finally, I wanted to mention the Grade Crossing Safety Improvement Program, which I understand is on our agenda for our next Safety and Security Committee meeting, so you'll be hearing a lot more about that. So I know that was very, very quick. In the interest of time, the full presentation is in the book. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Bringman.
Okay, actually, this is a general question for both of you, because I've always learned never assume anything. Do both railroads have similar programs?
Yes.
Okay, so you share best practices.
Yes, we absolutely do.
Excellent. I think that's very impressive what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I may have missed it, but I assume that the findings that you do identify, you use it for future trainings?
Absolutely. That's one of the important partnerships that we have is with operations training, and they're part of those roadway worker audits that I mentioned. They're included in the district safety committees. We meet with them monthly, separate from all of that. So yes, it's an ongoing conversation to ensure that. Thank you.
Anybody else? I would just add that one of the other important features of safety in our system is the inspections of the rolling stock that take place daily in many cases, and then also on quarterly cycles. And Kathy Rinaldi and I were out at Croton Harmon on Friday touring with Assemblymember Zabrowski, who is actually the new Corporations Committee chair and is an important, obviously very important member of the legislature for us because he's the Assembly side committee chair overseeing the MTA. And what really highlighted was how the new Croton Harmon yard is enabling a really first-class modern approach, how much more, how it facilitates our inspections and our whole safety process to have a first-class facility. And so it sort of reinforces how investment in capital, it doesn't always seem self-evident, but investment in major capital projects like the Croton Harmon Yard actually supports a first-class safety management program, and we've got one at both railroads. I'm going to bring us to a close because we're a couple minutes behind, but I just wanted to note, I mentioned before the transit police of the NYPD, but our own MTA PD have been doing an extraordinary job on the railroads. And something that we've both been fighting for hard took place at the end of last week, which was the first transit ban of somebody who committed an assault on one of our employees. That individual was banned from both railroads. We initially, because of the way that the statute was worded and the judiciary was interpreting it, there was in a couple cases some confusion about how the ban would work. But there was a ban entered against an individual who committed an assault against one of our employees, and we continue, when we see this and other ban-eligible crimes, to pursue it. And I just want to credit Chief Mueller because he has been on it day after day and making sure that folks who move against our employees improperly are appropriately penalized. So with that, Mr. Tessitore.
Very, very quickly. So we appreciate it and the chief's efforts. And the message to the public should be, if you assault a transit worker, you're going to get banned from our system. That's what has to be the takeaway from this. You hurt an employee at the MTA, you don't get to ride the MTA.
Amen. Thank you. Well said. All right. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Any opposition? We are adjourned. Thank you.